G'day, how you going? God bless you. Before I launch into the topic of this video, which is why the church will not be raptured this week, I'd just like to read to you from Proverbs chapter 18 verses 13 and 17, which says this: "He that answers a matter before he hears it, it is a folly and a shame unto him." And verse 17, "He that is first in his own cause seems just, but his neighbour comes and searches him." So, on the 23rd of September this week, the Revelation 12 verses 1 and 2, and I believe verses 3 and 4, heavenly signs will occur. And some believe, because of verse 5, which says this: "And she brought forth a child, a man-child." Sorry, I'll start again. "And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne." Some believe that this verse is referring to the rapture, which in a sense it is. Because of the word caught up, which is the Greek word harpazo, which is mentioned in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verse 17, where it also says caught up and is using the Greek word harpazo. Some believe that because of that, this is the rapture. Now, what I'm going to explain to you is that Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 is a sign, and the meaning of the word sign is an indication or a token. So it is an indication and a token, a representation of what is going to happen. It is a token of the rapture. It is not the actual rapture. So we're going to look at the definition of the Greek word Sémeion, used in verses 1 and verses 3. And we're going to look at the original meaning of the word sign or token used in the Bible, which occurs in Genesis chapter 9. So let's just click on that verse number 1, and this is Revelation 12 verse 1 in different translations. And if we click on the Greek tab, we'll have the Greek translation, and we can see here a sign. So in the King James, it uses the word wonder, and that word means a sign. And the Greek word, the transliteration of that is Sémeion, and the Strong's Concordance reference is 4592, which we'll click on, and that'll open in another tab, which I'll now click on. So 4592 is Strong's Concordance reference in the Greek, and it's Sémeion, and the meaning of that is a sign. So the short definition means a sign, a miracle, indication, and the long definition, if you like, means a sign, miracle, indication, a mark, token. So, if something is a token of something, it's not the actual thing. Indication, it means that it's not the actual thing. It's a reference to the real event. So we'll go to Genesis chapter 9, and the first time the word token is used in the King James Version is in Genesis chapter 9. And generally speaking, the first time something is mentioned in the Bible will give an explanation of what that is, or a definition. So it's important to look at the first example of a word that occurs in the Bible. That gives us an idea of what the original meaning is. So the context here is just after the global flood, and God is telling Noah, and you can read it for yourself. Token is mentioned 3 times here. God is telling Noah that he's going to set up a rainbow in the clouds as a token of his covenant. If we read here, verse 13, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of the covenant between me and the earth. So it is not the actual covenant, it is a token or a sign of the covenant. So if we click on verse 12, and I'll open that in a new tab, and we've got all the translations here, and we've got the Hebrew tab up here, so we'll click on that to get the Hebrew, the original Hebrew. So it says here a token, and that Hebrew word is oath. So we'll click on the Strong's Concordance reference in Hebrew, which is 226, and that's going to open in a new tab, and you can see here that oath means a sign. And if we look at some of the examples given here, I've got I've got it opened up here, 1 Samuel chapter 10, this one here. If we go to that, verse 7, and let it be when these signs are come unto thee, that thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee. So I'll just read that again. And let it be when these signs are come unto thee, that thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee. So Samuel is talking to Saul, and the previous verse says, and the Spirit of the Lord will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and shalt be turned into another man. So when this happens, that's meant to be a token or a sign that God is with thee, as we read at the end of verse 7. So it's a representation, it's an indication that God is with thee. So I've given 2 examples, and there's other examples in this here. There's 79 occurrences of the Hebrew word oath, 226. So the meaning of the word is a representation, right? So if we go back to Revelation chapter 12, and I'll just the sign of Jonah. I think it says there Matthew chapter 12 verse 39. I'll just click on that. So there's 77 occurrences of the Greek word Sémeion, so 4592 Strong's Concordance. So if we go to Matthew 12:39, I'll just click on the King James. Verse 39. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. So if you go to the book of Jonah, and we'll read here, as we read here in verse 40, for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, or the fish's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So what happened to Jonah was an indication or a token of what was going to happen to Jesus. Jesus then died, and he spent 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. He was put into a tomb, and so what happened to Jonah was a token or a sign or an indication of what was going to happen to Jesus. So I've given you two examples in the Old Testament and one example in the New Testament of what a sign is. It is not the actual event. It is an indication of what's going to happen. So if we go to Revelation chapter 12, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. So that sign we know is definitely going to happen on the 23rd. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that that is going to happen. But it is a sign. It is a sign of what's going to happen in the future. According to the dual chronology of the book of Revelation, chapters 12 and chapter 6 are matching events. They are the beginning of the tribulation. From Yom Teruah 2017, which is the day before the 23rd, so Yom Teruah, when it has fully come, Acts chapter 2 verse 1 in reference to Pentecost says, when that day had fully come. And then Peter starts talking and he's saying it's the third hour, which is the Hebrew hour for 9 o'clock in the morning. So we know that Yom Teruah, when it is fully come, that'll be the 22nd of September. On the evening of the 21st, that is when the sun sets and the crescent moon will be seen. That is when Yom Teruah begins. And that is when the 1335-day countdown begins to the rapture. And then on Pentecost 2021, that is when the rapture occurs. Interestingly enough, Pentecost also has a countdown. There's a 50-day countdown to Pentecost. And that is a second witness, if you like, that there is a countdown involved, that we have a starting point and an end point. So back to the main topic. Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 and 2, that sign, and Revelation chapter 3 and 4, Revelation chapter 12 verses 3 and 4, those two signs are an indication of what's going to happen, a representation, a token, not what is actually going to happen. Yes, that sign is definitely going to occur. The astro birth, if you like. We have lots of different components to Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 and 2 going on. We have the gestational period of Jupiter within the womb of the constellation Virgo. We have what is known as the conception comet that occurred. That the comet that is known as C/2017 E1 that occurred 3 days prior to the 20th of November 2016. So the comet hit the cervix of the constellation Virgo on the 17th of November. And I've got a Facebook post that details all the things that have to do with Revelation chapter 12 verses 1 and 2. We've got this red dwarf called Ross 128, which is right near the woman's head, and there was a mysterious signal given out earlier this year that could be construed as the woman crying out, and that may again happen on the 23rd when she gives birth. We have Hanukkah happening on the 26th of November in 2016, which I believe is the day of implantation. And like I say, I've got a Facebook post detailing all that information. And so on the 17th of November, the constellation is inseminated, and then 3 days later, that's when conception occurs. So I've got details on a Facebook post about that. But all this is a indication. It is a sign. So when Jupiter is birthed, that is not going to be the day of the rapture. Okay? I understand that verse 5 says, and her child was caught up under God. But that is an indication of what's going to happen 1,335 days after Yom Teruah 2017. Daniel chapter 12 verse 12 says, blessed is he who waits to the end of the 1,335 days. Titus chapter 2 verse 13 says that the appearing of Christ is the blessed hope. Now, there are some who are saying that Revelation chapter 4 is also an indication of when the rapture occurs. There's one particular man who's been saying that for some time, that Revelation chapter 4 verse 1, which I'll go to now, verse 1, and after this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. So, if Revelation chapter 12 is the rapture, then chapter 4, verse 1 of Revelation does not make sense in that context, because because of the words, I will show thee things which must be hereafter. So there's a certain gentleman who was saying for some time, has been saying for a number of years, that Revelation chapter 4 verse 1 was the rapture. And now that the Revelation 12 sign is about to happen this week, he has in the last year been saying that Revelation 12 verse 5 is also the rapture. And I'll bring up a graphic in post-production that he refers to about this. Now just bear with me as I give you some more context here. Revelation chapter 1 verse 1 says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel and unto his servant John. So, must shortly come to pass. Then if we go down to this verse here, verse 19, write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. So, we're told in the beginning chapter of Revelation, we are told that there are things which are, and there are things which shall be hereafter. So the text has to tell us when the difference occurs between those two events. So the things which are, they are chapters 2 and 3, which are the letters to the 7 churches. And the things which shall be hereafter, that is signified by the next time we are told that it is hereafter. So if we go back to chapter 4, verse 1, right? So John is, he looked, a door was opened in heaven, and a voice was heard as a trumpet talking to him, which said, come up hither, and I'll show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. So the trumpet occurs. Here's the trumpet. He's caught up to heaven, and he is going to be shown things that will happen hereafter. So Revelation chapter 12, that is an event that happens hereafter. So Revelation chapter 4 verse 1 and Revelation chapter 12 verse 5 are not connected, simply because this verse in chapter 1, the end of it, clearly says, I will show you the things that must happen hereafter. So Revelation 12, because it happens after John is caught up, it is not connected to Revelation chapter 4. So Revelation chapter 4 and chapter 5, it is a throne room scene, and we see angels, we see the 24 elders, we see the beast, not the beast in Revelation chapter 13, but the beast we see here in verse 7. The first beast was like a lion, the second was like a calf, the third was like a man, and the fourth was like an eagle. We don't see any reference to the saints like we do in Revelation chapter 7, where it talks about people from different nations, from different tongues. So what we see in Revelation chapter 4 and chapter 5, we see no reference to the saints. We see a multitude of angels, but we do not see in any instance a multitude of saints or people that represent the nations. There is no reference to the nations, people from the nations. Now, there is a reference, I think, in chapter 5 to the prayers of the saints. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odours, which are the prayers of the saints. That's the only reference to saints in these 2 chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5. But it is referring to the prayers of the saints. Right? It is referring to the prayers of the saints. It is not referring to saints being present in that throne room scene in chapter 4 and chapter 5. Okay, I wanted to keep this short. I've now gone for about 20 minutes. So I think I've made my point. Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 is talking about a sign. The Greek word is Sémeion, and that means an indication, a token, a representation. It does not mean the actual event. It is a token of the event. So when we get to verse 5, where it talks about the man-child, which is the body of Christ, which is the church, where it says caught up, yes, it is the Harpazo. Yes, it is the church being caught up, but not at that time, because that is a token and a sign and a representation of what's going to happen 1,335 days after Yom Teruah 2017. All right. Thank you for paying attention and listening to what I believe is going to happen, which is that the church is not going to be raptured this week.